Boulevard, Eastlake, Ohio. It is now 7:02 p.m. Ms. Perkison, will you call the roll?
Dr. Beal?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mr. Merhar?
Here.
Mr. Roscoe?
Here.
Mrs. Uren?
Here.
Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Thompson, I believe we have a speaker tonight.
We do. Mr. Stolman, Rob Stolman, is going to deliver a business systems update that I think you'll find interesting. Mr. Stolman.
Mr. President, members of the board, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to talk about a few things this evening that I've been working on since I started here in August. A rose by any other name would smell sweet. I believe that Bill Shakespeare had something there. It doesn't matter what you call it, it's what it does that matters. And efficiency makes productivity. This is a great quote from Pete Drucker, really the founder of management. So I've spent my time working to reimagine some of our business systems, creating a pathway to do that has been very, very interesting. It's been easy at times, and other times we've had some things to work around. But where to start? These are the areas that sort of, I don't mean to say that they're easy, low-hanging fruit, but these are the first things that presented themselves to me as ways that we could make some inroads rather quickly, and in all three of their cases, sort of a big bang for the buck. They are building use or facilities management, purchasing, time and attendance programs. The key to the success of implementing change to a business system is working as a collaborative conduit between administrative, building, and departmental silos. Everybody knows that any organization that you're in, that you work in, or that maybe potentially in your place of worship, there's silos, there's pockets of information, and people can become rather protective of the information at their disposal and what they're in charge of. So, silos are not necessarily bad, and I'm not saying that the schools, each one of our school buildings is a silo into itself. Each one of our departments here is a silo into itself. The only time they're detrimental is when those silos don't talk to each other. Within the silo, it gives a sense of community. It allows us to have authorities within that building to break down our workforce, so it's not 850 people that are trying to do all the jobs at the same time. So, working through and collaborating with those silos has been the most important aspect. All three of these systems, all three of these business system solutions will work to fulfill our fiduciary responsibility to the voters. Centralize, this is a big one for us, centralize operational functions to allow building and department administration and staff to spend more time in the business of education. Anytime a system makes it so paperwork has to bounce from department to department, or clogs up decision making, or this building has a policy that's different from that building. Those things just come from history. It's our responsibility to continually be looking for those things, to centralize those decisions wherever possible to allow people, especially building administrators, to go about the business of education. And so the operations of the district happen without necessarily their input. They just happen to happen. These will also eliminate redundancy, increase efficiency, and work towards eliminating paper forms. Green initiatives. I've been involved in several green initiatives, and the thing about green initiatives is they're green in two different ways. One, they're good for the environment, and two, they make good green sense money-wise. Napoleon Bonaparte said that armies run on their stomachs. Well, I'm here to tell you, in my 6 months' time in the school business, school systems run on paper, 8.5 by 11, and it feeds through a copier. So anything we can do to help reduce that in the go forward is good for us from a systemic issue. And they're all, most importantly, revenue positive. We're going to start with the building use and facilities management. This is already underway. We're working on filling out sort of the background information for what it takes to put all of our building calendars into one central location. What's great about this software is it's through a company that we're already using for our website and several other things like PowerSchool. So the cost of implementation was ridiculously low. It was under $2,000. It's going to streamline all of our facilities scheduling process through one central calendar. So no longer will there have to be a calendar for where we keep all of the dates for the Performing Arts Center and all the dates for the South Gymnasium. All these things in the district. If Troop 162 uses Classroom 112 at Longfellow, that can all be put through one system so you can easily find out what's happening in the district. Plus, it goes down to the building level. It'll eliminate antiquated, inefficient paper building use forms, which lead to, in many cases, or in some cases, I don't want to overstate the point, lead to lost revenue because by the time the paperwork gets processed, somebody could have already rented the building and been done before we got a bill out to them. It might have been $100 or $200. We're not talking tens of thousands of dollars. But just simply because our system was antiquated and how many hands it had to pass through in the past, by limiting that, shortening that, making it more efficient, we'll be able to capture those things. This will also allow us to publicly monetize our available rooms and public spaces. Right now, there's not an easy way to do that. And there is no standardized policy in the district how we charge for it. We have, there's certain things, City of Willoughby uses the gyms for their municipal basketball league. And we've been charging the same thing for years, and it's no small amount of money. The same thing with the municipal basketball league. But even though those uses are the same, there is a difference between this one and that one because they happen in two different places. And way back when that started, those buildings were really siloed. And that was how it was prior to Mr. Thompson and back when all those decisions were made at the building level. So this principal said this, and this principal said that, and it sort of circumvented anything larger, not from a nefarious way, or not in a nefarious way, but it was done for ease of use. We couldn't centralize those decisions because things had to be done on paper. Now we can use them in an e-calendar, centralize those decisions, get that out of the processing in the building to allow those people in the building to do more in education and less about going forward. On a related note, just to show you the upside that can happen for the district, we already have the tax rented to two different entities. And between those two entities, one is for 4 different uses in a week, and the other is over a weekend utilizing a lot of the school. It's almost $10,000 in revenue. So the PAC can become a real profit center for us because it is a state-of-the-art facility and it's right-sized for so many events that we can put that out to the general public and really make some hay with it. Secondly, we're addressing purchasing by moving to an e-procurement system. Most of us do a certain amount of online purchasing now. We use Yahoo, or we use Land's End, or Sears, or I don't even know. We use Yahoo a lot, or Amazon a lot. So we all have become more familiar with how that works and the ease of use. So many of the original platforms that came out in online purchasing, especially at the corporate level or in the business world, were very clunky, and they were trying to reinvent the wheel. We found a product, actually, Mr. Parkinson, our treasurer, was the one who turned me on to Equal Level to look at. We found a product that has really done an outstanding job of making it user-friendly by making it more consumer-like in how it operates. We will load into it the vendors that we want to be into it, and then each user will then get on and they see their store. And they can, depending on who that buyer is, that purchasing person in our district, they can set up their store so it works more friendly for them. Most importantly, this product works with USAS, state software. So our internal programming, our internal systems in the treasurer's office don't have to change to use it. It will work right along and through our existing systems that are in place. So that's a real benefit for us as far as uploading and unloading to this platform. Is one, because it is so user-friendly, I think the actual users of the product will be quick to pick it up. But secondly, and more importantly, it won't cost us dollars in labor or downtime making systems work within the state software, because it already does that. One of the other things that it does is if you were shopping for a Bostitch 1055 stapler, you could type in Bostitch 1055 stapler, and it would bring up everybody who sold that from the vendors that we have. Or you like Office Depot. You can go into Office Depot and use their search tool and come up with a Bostitch 1055. The system, when you go to move that to your cart, the system will also give you two other choices. One that is the same product at a lower price, if there is a lower price, and secondly, so the third frame in that will give you a comparable product at a lower price. That's great for everyday use, but this will allow us to do something that we cannot do right now because of our system, because we don't have a system. This will allow us to build a history of all of our purchasing that's done for office supplies, as well as educational supplies, editorial supplies, really any purchases that we make for stuff that's not made on the credit card. It's only about $1,200 a year, a very small amount. So most of our purchases will be able to go through this, and we will be able to look and see real data to make ongoing purchasing decisions. So hopefully we can take that list of potential vendors, pare that list down, or in some cases limit what can be purchased from a vendor on the go forward, so we know that we're capturing the best dollar value. We're part of 16-some buying groups. Another that the person that was doing purchasing prior, he set these up, and it's a wonderful thing. But we really haven't been able to take full advantage of them because it was sort of after the buying decision was made that it went into that system. With this, Staples is part of it too. So we will be able to order from Staples, and the Staples price will show the pricing that we get through that Ohio school buying. instead of showing a retail price and then we realize the savings later, we'll be comparing our negotiated prices with negotiated prices to really get much better vision on all of our buying choices. Lastly, time and attendance. Further implementation of the Kronos platform. Kronos is a huge time and attendance product. They started out with one product that did it all. And companies the size of the Cleveland Clinic Foundation use Kronos. Companies as small as Ruff's RV Center and Kingsville use Kronos. And they were all using the same program, and the thing is that their pricing was scaled to the number of users, and it was a rather complicated licensing formula that gave you your price, but it could do amazing things. It could do everything for everybody. The problem is to implement all of those things was not always as easy as you might guess. Because if it can do 1 million employees and 4 employees, there's a whole lot behind the scenes that has to be done for it to do both of those things. Well, what we're working on is transferring from the full Kronos product that we currently have, which is based on our internal servers, backed up by us, to moving to their newer product, which is Time for School K-12, which is cloud-based, which will reduce in cost because it won't be part of our backup system anymore. It'll be cloud-based. And one of the keys in implementing this is through the adoption and implementation, we will create efficiency by evaluating all the systems that go into it. When we came up on it last time, because we were moving to the product, it was sort of an all or nothing. We'll be able to mirror our current system as we bring this new cloud-based system on board. So we'll be able to test it ahead of time. There won't be some of the difficulties that stopped us part of the way through implementation in the past. So we'll be able to get to a full implementation. But while we're doing that, be able to refine some of our protocols and systems in real time as we work through it. It's a great program. It'll aid workforce issues. It'll make sure that all 4 of our contracted labor groups, we're meeting everything that we said we would do with them contractually. And this is a big one, reduce a whole lot of paper use by fully implementing this product. This has been a professional mantra of mine for 25 years. Good enough isn't. And I'm happy to say that really been adopted by Mr. Thompson and senior leadership team here in really used by the school. When I brought some of these things to Mr. Thompson and said, well, this is what I'm seeing, the support that I got from that was, if it can be better, let's make it better. And I would say, what about? And he said, well, if it can be better, let's make it better. So I've received a ton of support in moving these 3 things along. And what's been really great for me is not being currently in one of those silos. I've really been able to work with my colleagues here at the board office and folks out in the buildings, the administrators out in the buildings, and not being part of another silo. I've really been able to work well with everybody and get a lot of buy-in. Because when you deal with things on the personal level, like we've been able to, and with good people, they really do want to make a better end product. They really do want to see improvement. And that's what I'm seeing in the district. So thank you very much for this opportunity for this evening. Does anybody have any questions?
Mr. Stolman, how will Kronos, for example, help us control overtime or track overtime?
Kronos, because it'll be real time. Right now, time is signed off at the end of the week by building administrators, but that's where the system had that that check procedure. This can be done in real time. So take, for example, the thermostat at any school. Part of the new system with Kronos is the schedule would be uploaded, and the head custodian or plant supervisor the following day would be saying, that person came in late, that person left early, this person, they stayed 20 minutes late. Tomorrow I need you to leave 20 minutes early. Instead of waiting for sort of the end of the payroll period and saying, wait a minute, where's this extra 25 minutes? We're doing it in real time, right there. And a system that changed before I got here hasn't been taken advantage of yet, and that was with the plant supervisors moving into, they're now part of our administration. This will really take advantage of some of those things we put in place.
For the edification of the board and the community, oftentimes it's not just the software itself, but it's the way in which it's used. So for example, building principals were signing off on overtime for really at the end of the week with having no real idea of what was done, what wasn't done. There was no mechanisms for control of those systems. So all three of these systems help us. It's in an effort to, how can we streamline, how can we reduce expenditures, how can we ultimately save positions? That's our ultimate goal, to make ourselves more efficient, so that there's two areas where we spend a lot of money. One of them's in overtime, and one of them's in substitutes. So this helps us control those expenditures to some extent.
In real time, that's the key to the whole thing, is that it can be done that day. We're not waiting for a paper system. And one other thing, on all three of these systems, the total implementation for all three of these is paid for within the first year. Because, like I said, the procurement piece was $2,000. That was it. Kronos, because we're moving to the cloud system, will save us money at the end of this year. If we stayed on the current system, we would have to spend about $70,000 for an upgrade. By moving to the cloud-based system, there will no longer be those $70,000 charges every 2 to 4 years. The cloud automatically updates. So those two alone will pay for the first time.
Right, let me ask the question, so all staff will be punching in and out on or just overtime, or?
Yeah, we'll sit down with you once it's fully ready to go. We'll sit down with union leadership and make sure we're all understanding who isn't.
So during the day when a sub comes in, and I schedule a sub to come in to cover, or a teacher covers somebody who's out that reports, that's when it'll be used?
Right, it can be
Some great
all
examples.
of those things rather than those paper sheets. You get lost, get file, it's really just to make it all happen right here. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay, well, item 2, the minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of January 13th, 2020.
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Jones.
I motion to approve item 2A, approval of minutes of January 13th, 2020.
Thank you. Do I hear a second?
Seconded.
Mr. Merhar?
Well, I'll second that.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes. Next, item 3 is our treasurer's report. Mr. Parkinson?
Thank you, Dr. Beal, members of the board. The first item for your consideration is the financial report ending January 31st. Details of that report can be found in Exhibit A. Next, for your consideration are the amended appropriations for fiscal 20. This is for state audit purposes. Those That detail can be found in Exhibit B. Item C for the board consideration is the amended certificate of estimated resources. This is for the county auditor's office, and that information can be found under Exhibit C. Excuse me. Next item for the board's consideration are purchase orders and blanket certificates. There is one then and now certificate for the board to consider, which is to PNC Bank, which is our credit card. That is the vendor that the purchase order is made out to. And then there are 3 blanket purchase orders for your consideration, which follow board policy. Anything over $50,000 must come before the board for your consideration and review. First is Dominion Energy, the second is Illuminating Company, and lastly Mayfield City Schools. And then there is one purchase order increase, and that is to commercial roofing, and we're asking for an increase of $263,000.
And that is covered through our insurance.
Yes. What is happening with that process is Travelers Insurance pays the school district directly, and then commercial roofing is submitting paperwork and other documentation to support the payment that they're asking for, and then the payment is paid up with those proceeds. At no time is the district using any funds beyond the reimbursement of the insurance proceeds to pay commercial roofing. Item E for your consideration is the refunding of the 2016 bonds. We are able to refund a portion of the construction bonds to save a little bit of money. The savings will be realized by the bond retirement fund. This is not general operating savings, but the bond retirement fund. So how that'll translate for the voters is eventually the millage will decrease for the voters as we continue to pay the principal and interest for these bonds. So this resolution does require a separate vote, and once I have this resolution in place, Dr. Beal, I'll proceed with bond counsel to get this finished.
You've heard the treasurer's recommendation. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Erton.
I make the motion to approve item 3E, approval of refunding of the 2016 bonds.
Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Mr. Rosas. Is there any discussion?
Actually, yeah. When I was reviewing this, I actually took some time to take a look at it. Now, this is all assuming our credit downgrade, I guess, is as far as the numbers that I'm seeing here. Is so the savings is if Moody's decides to still downgrade our credit?
That is correct, Mr. Marhar. The bonds that we're refinancing, the House Bill 264 note that we're refinancing, and the 2015 COPS, which was the debt instrument that we used to purchase NCI Willoughby. Those particular savings analysis was done assuming that Moody's will downgrade us one notch. I did take a look at some numbers, and I had the bank make the assumption that we were not downgraded. If we were not downgraded, now the Moody's report is coming Thursday, so all indication is it will probably get downgraded. It's not a guarantee, but the savings is based on the downgrade. If we are if we aren't downgraded, then we are going to be able to realize an additional $804,000 between all 3 refinancings as a result of staying even with our credit rating. If we get downgraded, then that's $804,000 that we're going to lose out on. We're still saving money, but it's $804,000.
What's the savings if we're downgraded? You know.
Oh, yep, I do know that.
Is the basis for the downgrade primarily due to a 6.3 potential emergency operating levy, or is it the November failure, or a combination of the two?
It's basically has to do with the cash position of the school district.
Okay.
Our cash position is eroding. Unfortunately, the result of the November levy failure has a lot of weight as to why Moody's is downgrading us. I did indicate to Moody's that the district does have a very strong levy history. It's not that we fail a whole lot of levies. I gave them the complete history dating back to the early 80s. indicated we do have a strong levy history, indicated that we have a very strong levy committee out there. I sold the heck out of the school district to try to communicate to Moody's that we are in a very good position. If you look at, I handed out this chart to everyone. This chart is the matrix that Moody's uses to decide and determine at what credit rating should a school district be at. So, for example, to answer your question, Mr. Thompson, the cash balance, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines down, says cash balance as a percent of revenue. It's under the AAA column. We are, in fact, our cash balances are 10%, greater than 10%. I actually was surprised that percentage was as low as it was, but that is something that is going to help us try to persuade Moody's that we should stay even.
Okay.
So that's one of the things I did point out to Moody's last week. There are some other things that hurt us, like the 3-year average of the net pension liability, which is my editorial, it's totally bogus. It's bogus because the pension systems cannot come to the school district directly and say, pay us money. Anything the pension systems want to do in the state of Ohio have to be done as an act of the General Assembly signed off by the governor. In other states, the pension systems can go directly to the school system and say, hey, pay up. But as a result of this accounting ruling, national accounting ruling, my audits indicate what that liability is, which is completely bogus. It's false. But that's something that Moody's still has to take into consideration.
Okay.
You and I have argued this position before in previous meetings with them, and I argued the hell out of it.
Okay.
The other thing that is hurting the school district is the 3-year, the net pension again, is the debt ratio. We do have some debt with respect to unvoted debt. It's a little bit higher, and Moody's uses peer school districts to compare us, and that's under the single A column, so that's something that might affect us. That's not something that's unknown to Moody's. So, I'm certainly no expert in Moody's analytics and analysis, but all I could do is make our case as strongly as possible, advocate for the school district as possibly as I can, as strong as I can, and see what they say.
So that number is what then? 800,000 if it's not downgraded, and
it is. I just lost it. Sorry. As I was talking.
too many forms to fill.
Yeah. I know. Okay. So we have this one. 3, 4. These are all savings that are indicated previously. 320 milk will substitute at 3. It's gonna be
Substantially lower.
it's substantially lower. Correct. Okay, no fish. Put that over here. Plus 202 plus. Okay, so right now we are anticipating a savings of $1,632,000 with our assumed one-notch credit downgrade. If we are able to stay even, we potentially could save $2,437,000. Now that $2 million, that 2.4, the 1.6, that's not immediate. That's over the remaining maturity of each individual.
Yeah, sure.
I'm not extending the maturities. I'm not playing around with any of that. I'm taking our current maturities and seeing what savings we can realize within that parameter. So if we have 20 payments left, then I'm using those same 20 payments and trying to eke out a savings. So $1.63 million, $384,000 of that, I should say $587,000 is directly applicable to the general fund. So it's roughly $50,000 a year. And then the $1,046,000 is directly attributable to the bond retirement fund.
And some of that hits the PI fund as well, I would assume.
Nothing for the PI fund. I wasn't able to refinance any of the PI fund.
All right. Thank
So,
you.
we'll roughly save about $50,000 a year in principal interest directly out of the general fund each and every year. So, just for the board's reference, the Board of Education adopted the refunding of the 2 COPS issuance last calendar year, late last fall. So those pieces are already in place. This is the last piece, is the bond retirement fund.
Well, thank you for your work, Bill. So we have the Treasury report and the recommendation for the approval of refunding of the 2016 bonds, item 3E. Do I hear a motion? Oh, we did, I'm sorry.
We just need the...
So is there any further discussion then? Okay. Mr. Ferguson, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Thank you, members of the board. Next item for your consideration is the Ray and Associates contract for services related to basically the Medicaid program. Ray and Associates helps the school district file this very complex report on behalf of the school district. It ensures that we comply with all the applicable federal rules with Medicaid, and they do a lot to make sure that we're also in compliance with the auditor of state's office when it comes to reporting issues. So this contract is very helpful for the school district to have in place. Next item for your agreement, this is the service agreement with Hometown Ticketing. This replaces the Hometown Marketing, which is bankrupt. I spoke with Walter Haverfield this afternoon. They have filed on behalf of the school board to make any claims. So we provided Walter Haverfield with all of our claims of lost revenue. We documented all of those lost receipts, presented that to Walter Haverfield, and Walter Haverfield presented our claims to the bankruptcy court today. The bankruptcy court has that information, so however things settle out in court, we're guaranteed to at least get something. I can't guarantee 100%, but at least we're there at the bankruptcy court being represented. So with this particular agreement, several area school districts have already agreed to this particular company. Mentor Schools is one of those. So and there's other schools that both Mr. Marino and Mr. Riley, who are the athletic directors at South and North respectively, that deal with, and their member schools have also dealt with this particular company. So this will allow the AED departments to continue. And should other activities be restored, and should they happen to sell tickets, this would be the company that would use.
It's just simply electronic sales of tickets for athletic events primarily.
Primarily, right.
But not exclusively, primarily.
A 2-year agreement, is that what I saw?
Yes, it's 2 years. Next, for the board's consideration of the service contract with TTG. This contract is being paid from nursing funds. So this does not affect operations. This is a nursing fund expense. It comes out of their revenue sources. Next up is the liability and cyber insurance renewal. The number that is on the agenda represents a 5% increase. I met Mr. Merhar earlier today, and we discussed the renewal. I reached out, based on our conversation, I reached out to Love Insurance, and they changed the deductible from $10,000 to $25,000. So instead of receiving a 5% increase, we would save an additional $13,000 by changing those deductibles, $13,745 to be exact. So our net increase would only be 1%. So we'll save 4% by doing that. So if it's okay with the Board of Education, I'll modify this to reflect the savings of $13,745 and go ahead with Love Insurance to raise the deductible from 10%. Next up is the 2020 recipient agreement for the senior levy funds. Again, this is outside the operations of the school district. This is a federal grant program. This particular program helps senior citizens of the community. We are their fiscal agent, so anything that this particular agency needs done has to run through our books, and if they have any agreements like this, it comes to the Board of Education for your review and consideration. Next up are the student activity program purposes, goals, and proposed budgets for fiscal year 20. The auditor state requires that if any activity program wishes to change their purpose and goals and/or their budgets, that every time they do that, they come before the Board of Education for your review and consideration. So those particular programs who are wanting to do those things are listed under item K for your review. Item L represents returns of advances, and there's one from a state grant amount of $3,000. As you recall, the Board of Education adopted a blanket policy of $2.5 million for advancing funds from the general fund. So this is just return of those a portion of funds. My office does keep track of the advances that we do hand out. So anytime the Board of Education has any questions as how much we've done today, please let me know. I'll be happy to provide you with that spreadsheet. Next item for the board's consideration are transfer of funds. This is a direct transfer from the PI fund to the debt fund. The auditor state does allow us to make a direct transfer from the PI fund for the purposes of paying debt. There are no other purposes the auditor state allows for direct transfers. So this particular payment will be $2,173,000. These are for payments that are due coming March 1st. Next, for the board's consideration, transfer funds to close accounts. There's one account to close. It's Project More. This is related to the IRS review program. And so we are transferring $16.25 to close out Project More, and then net proceeds to IRS review. I told them not to spend it all in one place. Next item for the board's consideration of transfer of funds. This is the termination benefit fund. This is a monthly routine item, $50,000. This amount won't change for the remaining of the fiscal year. Depending on how the payments work out in O3-5 fund, we may be able to save a payment or two. It just depends. The budget already includes all payments all the way through June. But if we can save $50,000 or $100,000 based on costs out of the O3-5 fund, I'll let it go. Next item for the board's consideration are grant acceptances. The auditor state requires that the district are to accept any grants that comes to you for review and consideration. There are 6 for, I believe there are 7 for your review and consideration, and they can be found in item P. And then lastly, for your consideration are gifts and donations. Many organizations have generously donated to the school district, and those details can be found under item Q. And Dr. Buell, those conclude my reports.
Thank you. Next, item 4 is the superintendent report.
Thank you, Mr. President. So questions that were brought before us last month, a question from Mr. Shook was he expressed concerns that persons on the school board are not specialists in the analysis of funding, appropriations, and believes that the district should request an external audit. In all school districts, there are checks and balances to ensure that the district is spending money and documenting expenses truthfully and accurately. The first measure is a review that is completed each year through the auditor of the state, and the district continues to receive high accolades for their performance in this area. And can you address just for briefly, Bill, some of the awards that have been recently achieved?
Yes, the Auditor State's Office recently concluded their audit of fiscal 19, and I got word from the State Auditor's Office that we will receive a 3rd Award of Excellence for audits. Basically what that means is the audit was, for all intents and purposes, perfect. They found no errors, no omissions, no liabilities, no violations of law. We filed all of our reports timely. We did everything that we needed to do as instructed by the Auditor State's Office of Revised Code. What I indicated to the Auditor State's Office, the local office I should say, is I'd like Mr. Faber, who is the Auditor of State, to come to the district to present that award. So I'm just waiting to hear from Mr. Faber's office to see if he'd be willing to do that. It's my understanding that he likes to present the awards himself and leave Columbus to do that, so I'm hopeful that he'll drive up 71 and come see us here. We'll do so.
That'd be great. Mr. Zavarol also spoke on, and he was speaking, if you recall, on, did I say that incorrectly or correctly? All right. Mr. Zavarol spoke on behalf of the Kiwanis Club and the South High Key Club, and his concern was that the Key Club and student organization run through the Kiwanis Club is one that benefits a lot of people, and chiefly one of the large activities they have coming up is the blood drive. And so that blood drive is largely dependent on our students to help pull that off. And that, of course, was halted with the November levy failure and the cancellation of those supplemental contracts. So he came to ask if there could be something that could be done, and we were able to help facilitate them to be able to have a meeting. We made it clear that our teachers could not assist the group, and they couldn't meet on our campus, but under the direction of our staff. However, we did meet with members of the Kiwanis Club to participate in a solution, to help find a solution to the challenge they were facing. Members of the Key Club are now meeting at the YMCA under the direction and supervision of the Kiwanis Club members, and that they're able to do all the planning necessary for the upcoming blood drive, and I believe that all parties were satisfied with that solution. So they are doing what they need to do, and the kids are, of course, monitoring their service hours. I had one of the most unique service hours sheets I've ever signed in my life last night. I believe it was last night. Was it Sunday night? Yeah, Sunday night. A student made different kinds of desserts for her mother's coffee she was hosting in her house, and got hours for baking of goods. How can you say no to that? I mean, she was volunteering clearly, so I signed.
How many hours was that?
78. No, I'm teasing. I think it was an hour or two.
Okay.
It was legitimate. So
Was the bake tasted any good?
they were excellent, actually. Yeah, they were really good. Not that I ate them.
You didn't bring any?
Yeah, they're outside. So next is our levy report. So there's been a lot of levy activity, and I want to just make sure I update you all and update the community. And there's many people sitting here that are at everything, and thank you so much. But starting in January and throughout the month, committees met in small groups to form action plans from suggestions that they received. One of our current focuses from this particular committee is to raise funds, and so far they've raised approximately $9,000 through many efforts. So thank you to those volunteers. That was headed up in large part by Chrissy Cloda and others. There's a social media group that have an increased presence on sites, and their objective is to present facts. They recently launched a new Facebook page, so that's out there and hopefully has some effect. As we know, about 50% of our parents are unregistered, so we've been, that's a pretty high percentage. So we've been really focusing on registering our parents. Our Get Out the Vote committee has continued voter registration tables at basketball games, at the YMCA. We've conducted a phone bank effort targeted, and we've gained approximately 10% of the people that we call are actually getting registered, so that starts to accumulate and add up over the course of time. Volunteer training happened on February 5th. Zach Roberts is from the Ohio Education Association, and he's been doing some training with our staff. What they've been discussing and training on is door-to-door campaign and phone banking, so they've been focusing on that. The phone banking will begin Wednesday, February 12th and continue through Election Day, and the door-to-door campaigns will begin approximately 10 days and continue through the Election Day. So those two efforts are about to begin. Information's been distributed weekly in newsletters. There are hard copies that are distributed to identify areas in the district, schools and libraries where those potentially could be passed out pass out a car card to our parents every day. And each day it has a new fact on the car card. Our website has been redesigned. It's easier to use. It's aesthetically more pleasing. There are a multitude of videos on the site, and I'm clearly seeing a pattern. When I make a video, a couple thousand people watch the video, and when somebody else makes a video, 5,000 or 6,000 people watch the video. So I think it's a clear and distinct message that I need to stop making videos. So we generally get anywhere from 2,500 to 7,000 or 8,000 hits per video, and we've got a lot of videos that are out there. Meetings that are coming up today, we've begun coffees in people's homes. We went to the Willowick Senior Center as our first trip to the Willowick Senior Center in a few years. While certainly not everyone was receptive to our messaging, there were a lot of folks who actually stood up and spoke about the need to support and pay it forward. So I was encouraged by what I heard at that particular coffee. All members of city councils are doing a Q&A on February 19th at 6 p.m. We're at the Willoughby Senior Center February 13th at 6 p.m. and then on March 1st at 2 p.m. We're at Breckenridge on February 14th. We're meeting with all the PTOs over the next 5 weeks, and our volunteer banking meeting and training is on February 12th. We have one I'm really excited about. We have students are holding their own coffee. So they're going to lead it. If you want to be encouraged by young people today, if you're becoming discouraged, I would really suggest you attend that coffee. There's some incredibly bright, articulate students that will lead that coffee. That's going to be at the Willoughby Public Library on February 17th. And I do have handouts for the board, so please don't let me forget to hand you those invites. And then we are at the Arts at Willoughby Fine Arts Association Evening Awareness on February 29th. Lori Elias, I believe that's how you pronounce her name. Elias, thank you. Lori Elias has organized that event, and a shout out to her and a thank you to her for doing so. Absentee ballots began. We're in the first week of that. Mass mailings are on their way, and yard signs are delivered today. So that will start to be out there and be visible. I would encourage folks to visit supportweschools.org. Everything that all of our presentations, ability to sign up for things, ability to donate funds, and I'm sure most of you are looking for ways to donate money to the levy committee. You can do it through Support We Schools. It was meant to be a joke. And then there's a tab that I think is really important. It's You Ask, We Answer. We've been capturing all the questions that we get when we're in coffees, that we get when we're in large group meetings, and we've been posting them there to try to increase transparency. And this levy is really critical from the perspective of, you remember in our beginning meetings, we talked about the need to balance the budget, and we made about $2.5 million in cuts in November. And we've surveyed the community, and the community's desire is to bring those $2.5 million in cuts back. And while we certainly support bringing those cuts back with the levy passage, we know that a levy passage and no reductions in our expenditures will have us back on the ballot in no more than 2 to 3 years. And I think most of us would agree that's an untenable situation. So whatever we bring back, even with a March levy passage, I think it's important to remember we have to make reductions, and we made those, I hope, abundantly clear to the community in all of our community meetings. So I just wanted to re-emphasize that. Other than getting you your flyers, I think that concludes the levy update. Yes, ma'am. 18. So it's coming up, obviously. Right, but it's really fast, it's really simple. You can register to vote in about 5 minutes. And you can do it.
I'm doing absentee ballot, I put mine in, and it takes 2 seconds, push the submit button, it prints it out, you sign it, and go.
So they're trying to make it easy, I think, in the state of Ohio to participate if you choose to. And we certainly need that. Mr. President, on resolutions, we ready to move towards resolutions?
Item 5.
Okay, item 5, Mr. President, is the first recommendation is for the Global Estates Advisory Management, or there are real estate firm, or they are here if you have any questions for them. Listed on your agenda are the buildings that they will be marketing to the community. Browning, Taft, Washington, River Road property, Shanklin Road property are the properties that we're currently looking at. So we will do our best to. We're working with the city as we try to make those properties develop into what they're hopeful can develop into.
Give a recommendation.
Yeah. So, yes, sir.
So item 5A on our agenda is the Global Real Estate Advisors Agreement. And you've heard the recommendation of the superintendent. Do I hear a motion?
Mr. President,
Yes, Mr. Jones.
I motion to approve item 5A for the real estate advisory agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear a second? Mr. President, Mr. Ostis, thank you. Is there any discussion?
Yeah, I have a question. So are they gonna put a dollar amount on all of those going on the property?
They have on some of them already, and if you look, it's, and that's a better touch term for the rest of them.
Thank you. Bruce Langus, Global Real Estate Advisors. We did do some preliminary evaluations. We gave Mr. Johnson many of these people last year. We did this preliminary evaluation on the buildings. We did more depth assessment. The process obviously we're asking the properties to do those evaluations.
So if you need a new copy of that.
Yes, first one.
I believe it is.
Is there any further discussion? Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item for your consideration is item B, the Adult Nursing Wage Index for the 1920 school year. So these are just reflective of increases that has previously been in place for the rest of the staff. So this has been an item we've talked about previously, but this is where you're actually officially taking action.
The superintendent has made a recommendation to approve item 5B, Adult Nursing Wage Index for 2019-2020. Is there a motion? Mr. Maher?
I'll make a motion to approve item 5B, Adult Nursing Wage Index.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President, will make a
Mrs. Zern?
second.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
I had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't see.
Are these numbers reflective of the 5-year forecast, like embedded in there? Like, I guess the question is for you, Bill, like the cost of the increase of the adult nursing
You see, so the 5-year forecast took into consideration all employees.
with the pay?
Yes, with the pay increase. So this is just going to catch up to the 5-year forecast.
Okay, okay.
Any further discussion or questions? Okay, Mr. Parkinson.
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. President. Item C for your consideration is the certified and classified substitute pay schedules for the 1920 school year. If we were to leave Mr. Murphy in charge of this, he would probably double the substitute's pay because Mr. Murphy is unfortunately responsible for finding said substitutes. And on any given day, we can be as low as 65 to even less % fill rates. One of the, I guess, downsides of a strong economy is, on a low unemployment rate, is it's difficult to find substitutes. So we do the best we can to fill them. Mr. Murphy's always coming up with ways to try to attract more subs into the district, but it is very, very difficult, and all the fields across all the unions, finding those positions is a challenge. So it's a fine balance between keeping ourselves competitive, but not further impacting the 5-year forecast through additional sub costs. So it's a balancing act.
Okay, so you've heard the superintendent. Do I hear a motion for item 5C?
Mr. President,
Mrs. Zern?
I make the motion to approve item 5C, certified and classified substitute pay schedules for 2019 and 2020.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Do I hear a second? Thank you, Mr. Merhar. We have a motion and a second. Mr. Parkinson, will call the roll.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mr. Merhar?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Rostos?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. President. The next item for consideration is the termination of a land lease with the YMCA. And what that is most folks probably wouldn't even know it, but the back part of the parking lot that runs where the former West End YMCA is located is actually Willoughby Eastlake School property. That was necessary, I don't even know how many years ago, to lease to the YMCA for $1 to expand their parking lot to make that work, which did not impact the school district in any way. But with that property likely being sold, it's an opportunity for us to break that lease and capture at least some money as they move to sell that property. But one of the challenges they have is space and enough space. So that puts us in a position to bargain ourselves, and perhaps with Global representing us, to capture at least some money as a developer comes in there. They're in talks with the developer now, but they're still just in talks at this point. But that breaks that lease so that land returns to us. Is that a consent? That is a consent. So item E for your consideration is a contract for furnishing for school pictures. I have our former school picture company, I think, struggled. I think it's fair. I think the majority of folks would say they think, yeah. Well, you get the sentiment. I filled in a lot of complaints about that company. We were in a 2-year contract, but we had an out clause. We exercised that out clause. Light Touch was our old, and I am recommending that we move to a company called Interstate to take the place of. Yeah, there's one positive thing, right? Hey. So that is item E for your consideration. Item F for your consideration. We have various entities that partner with us in College Credit Plus. So it is in our best interest to have contracts with those folks because that generally drives down our cost if we have contracts versus not. And a student can go there whether we have a contract or not. So it's in our best interest to, as students field interest in various universities, to provide that opportunity for our students. So that is what you're seeing there, the CCP agreements with Cuyahoga Community College, Lakeland, which is a normal partner, and Kent State University.
Can we do that? Are some of those courses actually taught at our facilities?
They are. Some of them are taught at our facilities. And it's in our best interest from a financial perspective to teach them on campus, but students ultimately have the opportunity to choose if they take the course on campus or they take the course off campus. And some, for a variety of reasons, choose off, and some stay on. Item G for your consideration is a overnight out-of-state field trip, and before everyone goes crazy on a field trip, this is tied to the curriculum, and it is through Northern Career Institute, so it involves students from the Business Academy students, which come from all 11 school districts in our consortium. And so we've been continually running those field trips. Item H for your consideration is the personnel agenda. That is available to the community prior to the board meetings, and then, of course, after the board meetings. Everyone on that list is subject to satisfactory records from the Bureau of Criminal Investigation and Identification, the Ohio Department of Education, and the Federal Bureau of Investigation before they become permanent employees in the school district. That concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. Next on our agenda is community engagement and public comment. Mr. Parkman, are there any people who wish to speak?
Yes, Dr. Beal, I have one, and Mrs. Jean DeSantis.
Okay. Well, just as a reminder, all speakers are asked to complete a public comment form and reminded that they have 3 minutes allotted time to speak. And as a matter of policy, all comments would be directed to the presiding officer. If we can't answer your comments or questions tonight, we have your contact information, you will hear from a representative of the district that is knowledgeable in your area of question. And in the interest of transparency, the answers will be repeated at the next month's meeting. Before speaking, please state your name, address, and group affiliation if appropriate. So, Mrs. Sims?
It is exhausting being one of the East Side School District, which is focused on current costs. According to the superintendent, we are in yet another financial crisis, and it makes perhaps the push. And so the board gave the okay for a special election. And let's not forget, when you put on a special election, you are stuck with the entire cost of it. And unfortunately, however you allow the issues, it was voted down. So now it's on again for March. When we were told that even if it passes, it will still not bring anything back. It is strange that our students have to endure all this stuff, and yet the administration has enough money to make new pay for this. I'm assuming that Mr. Beal is
Of the levy?
Isn't she the public relations coordinator now?
She's been for 5 years.
Okay. Oh, for 5 years?
Mm-hmm.
I thought the superintendent was public relations. And I know that the drama teacher now is coordinator of strategic relations and manager of the family.
Mm-hmm.
I do know that the community is not happy with the state of our schools and the decline of our state grades. And that we have to hold the administration and the school board accountable. We've been told that it's obviously because of the 2012 state cuts that we're in this position now. Well, Wicklow schools are not on the ballot asking for a levy. I know that Minner has no levy. I know that Kirkland has no levy. I know that Kingsville City Schools have no levy. I know that Kingsville Township schools have them already. In fact, the only schools that have a levy on the ballot are Willoughby, East Lake, and Fairfield. Don't quite understand how our neighbors are much better at planning and budgets. But I don't think that's the reason for it. I think it's the usual way things are done with this administration when they have plan and budget. I would like to say a few words to the school board. We have chosen to be on this Board of Education, and with that comes responsibility to be good stewards for the people of our community and the students of our schools. We better be getting business before we become a ghost town with beautiful schools and poor performing students that are half good.
Thank you, Mrs. Sanderson. That's exactly what we're trying to do. Thank you. That's the end of public comment. And next is meeting notification. The next meeting of the next regular meeting of the Board of Education is on February 10th on what date? March 9th at 7 p.m. here on the first floor of the Willoughby East Lake Board of Education, located at 35353 Curtis Boulevard. Next on the agenda is the adoption of the consent calendar. That's item 8A. Do I hear a motion? Mr. Maher.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent calendar.
Thank you, Mr. Maher. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President.
Mr. Roscoe? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Mr. Parkinson, will you call the roll?
Mr. Maher?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes. Next, next is I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to an executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Mr. President,
Mrs. Zern?
I make the motion to approve item 9A to adjourn to an executive session to consider the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Thank you, Mrs. Zern. Do I hear a second?
Mr. President.
Mr. Jones? Thank you, Mr. Jones. Do I hear any discussion? Hearing none, Mr. President, will you call the roll?
Mrs. Zern?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Maher?
Yes.
Mr. Roscoe?
Yes.
Dr. Beal?
Yes. I do not believe there's any other business that's going to be handled in the public session of the meeting, but if anyone would like to stick around, that's great. We are going to go ahead and adjourn into executive session.